To the cloud. This is week 5, R795 in dissertation proposal preparation class. And I have a return visitor. Here's soon may my teaching assistant. Return visitors. So Angie will be joining us, Dr. Angie. And I want to say Leuchtmann, but I've said that wrong 3 times before. So help me out there, Angie. Leuchtmann?
It is pronounced here Leuchtmann, according to my in-laws.
Okay, Angie Leuchtmann, and she is not that recent of a graduate anymore, more like 4 years ago, going on this spring, getting close to
2019. My degree posted
fall.
On Halloween 2019
in the fall, right? So it's only 3 and a few months off beyond 3 years. So Angie, while she was in the program, was working for Baker College, and she was very interested in Baker at what happens after people graduate in that first year induction and beyond, and what is a mentoring program like to might help people continue in their programs. And if you read the USA Today today, there was an article related to that, and a lot of talk and discussion about new ways of teacher training, new teacher training programs, and trying to establish some innovations in teacher education so as to have a larger pool of people stay beyond the first year. So Angie was very interested in that topic of first year induction teachers. If you are, and you want to read a dissertation on that, I'm sure she'd be happy to send that to you. Again, she got her doctorate at IU and IST back in the fall of 2019, I think we said. And it was great to have her and her husband here for graduation and all. And now she works for Springboard Collaborative, which she's working remotely because she's in Michigan, and Springboard Collaborative, I believe, is on the East Coast somewhere. Maybe it's in Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area. Yeah. And she's very interested in literacy and literacy skills and so forth. About a half hour from now, Patrick Walsh will come in, who's in the accounting program at BYU, Idaho, and he's going to help give us some advice and tips too. So Angie's going to start off with a bit just focused on the EDD side, and then we're going to move to the PhD side. And you've got a lot of resources that you've scoured and made available over the past few years for my students. This is probably the 4th time she's visited my class, and last year she was the first person and the last person. And I didn't want to do that to her again, so I just invited her once this time. And we're going to get the shortened version. So Angie, did I do a good enough job of intro? So why don't you just give us maybe 5, 6, 7 tips or advice for the EDD side with quals and getting ramped up to take them. And then we'll move to PhD side or dissertation defense and proposal and all that.
Okay. Do you want me to share my Google Doc that I have in the past, or do you want me to bring up the quals docs and go over those?
I think bring up the Google Docs good.
Okay. All right, I'll share my screen here. All right, so, and I'm happy to share this with Dr. Bonk again, if anybody is interested in seeing this. But I just kind of jotted down my process, and really from start to finish when it came down to when I got to the end and I'm looking at figuring out what it is that I want to do for my dissertation. So I started a little bit earlier in terms of deciding what I wanted to look at. So I started with a really broad topic. I knew I wanted to focus on new teacher attrition in general, but if you're living in the field of teacher ed, then you know that's kind of a multifaceted problem. And so I started to, I went around for a year and I just asked people who I knew were in the field at various levels. Maybe they were secondary or they were elementary. Some of them were seasoned teachers. They'd been there a really long time. I had access to a lot of new teachers who were my recent graduates. I asked principals, superintendents, anybody who I saw who I knew was in the field of education. I said, what do you think is happening with new teacher attrition? And I started to pick at those threads. And I mean, I did this even at my cabin up north at the beach when our neighbors came down, and I knew that she taught a language in secondary. And I said, what do you think about new teacher attrition? So I did that for a really long time. And I tried to find out what people are thinking about. And then what they perceive to be the most important theme. You know, what did I hear a lot about? And interestingly, because I know that this is something that is brought up a lot, money was not really a big issue, but support is. And so I started to look at the different ways that we support new teachers, and I decided to, and I ended up focusing on new teacher attrition in terms of new teacher mentoring programs. Moving right along, there are a lot of different supportive documents that IU offers. And so one thing that I use a lot, and it's linked here, is this site. So within here, you're going to find all sorts of information if you're an EDD student, if you're a PhD student, but there's a degree checklist. I had used the revalidation form once, but you have a lot of available forms here, and I use them extensively. So most of the stuff I do is digital, but I knew I wanted to have a paper something that I could write on. And so I did do that. The dissertation guide was really helpful for me. I'll come back to that later. But a lot of the things that you need are in here. So for example, the degree checklist, I went through here and I put dates on here. And then I also put anticipated timelines. Like, when do I hope to have this done by? And the reason I did that is because there are, for a lot of these tasks, there are some things that you need to have in motion ahead of time. And so, I wanted to have a full scope of exactly what I needed to do going up to the dissertation process, and certainly including quals. So I encourage you to check that out. I did print it, and I kept it saved in my bookmarks on my computer as well. I had to do my program of study a few times. And so I tell you that because I don't want you to get nervous if you have to do it more than once. It was maybe the form changed or something like that, but I had to do it a few times. So don't freak out if you have to, it's totally fine. And it's not gonna, I don't believe that it didn't hold me back anyway. When it came up to choosing my advisory committee, I was really intentional in choosing professors who I knew were interested in my field, in my topic in general. And what I did is, because I was doing this walkabout for a year in advance, trying to find my exact topic that I wanted to focus on, I started just kind of talking to my professors and saying, what do you think about this? And the our faculty at IU, their expertise is really wide spanning, and so and they want to help you. So I just came right out and asked them several times, what do you think about this topic? And Dr. Bonk gave me a good suggestion. He was my advisor while I was there, and he said, keep a little notebook, and every time you have a new idea, write it down and then come back to it later. You don't have to have it fully fleshed out. Dr. Bonk, you have something to add, I can tell.
Well, Dr. Brush was your advisor. I was your second.
Oh, okay. Well, he was my chair. He was my research chair.
Right. Okay, maybe I was, okay, so we could have split up that way, but I did give that advice.
You did.
Yeah.
And it was really helpful. And I'll tell you, I still have those little papers. I can't get rid of them. For some reason, they have emotional value to me. Can't get rid of them. But that was helpful because it felt to me to be overwhelming. Like, oh my gosh, all the things that I really wanted it to be an important, meaningful, groundbreaking thing. And what I kept hearing from people over and over again is, this is one study that you are going to do of many in your career. So it's okay. Make it be something you're interested in, but it doesn't need to shatter records. Okay, so quals. I know this is the specific thing that you wanted me to really focus on, but when it came time for quals, I had this realization that it was this big, meaningful thing that I was going to do, and you have to pass quals to move forward. So I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I'm here to encourage you and to let you know that you're going to receive, at least when I was going through, I don't know if this is still the case, but I received an email with specific directions, exactly what I needed to do. And one of the things that I had to do was to write about my topic. And I kept thinking like, well, gosh, I'm already writing about it for this dissertation proposal. And I thought, okay, well, I guess I'm redoing it. And I'm telling you, it was so helpful for me because it helped me to really fully flesh it out. So it's a really meaningful step. You will have one day, at least when I did it, I had one day where it was a 2-day process, and it was like an article critique was one of the things. And so I'm a person, I have multiple screens, like I have 3 screens here right now. So I thought, oh no, I'm so used to working with more than one screen, but you can bring, I brought 2 laptops, one for a monitor and one for typing. And for me, that was super, super helpful. And I also had all sorts of just materials that I thought I would need. So, who cares if you're lugging in this ginormous bag? This is your day. You do it the way that you need to do it. But also like stay calm. You have a few hours to do this. So I, stood up and I stretched and I, drank some water. I took a breathing break and then I sat back down. And for me, that was really helpful because when your anxiety gets up, then your recall and your comprehension and your clear thinking goes down. So anyway, I brought a lot more than I ended up using, but for me, I was really glad that I had it there because I didn't know if I was going to have a paper copy of this article that I could use a highlighter on, but I brought highlighters. So bring more than you think you need. If you're traveling from out of town, that was me. I live in Michigan. I came the night before and I came like mid-afternoon. And I went and I had a nice little dinner and I walked around because I said, you know what, I'm prepared, I'm ready to go. I didn't like cram everything, but that was really important for me so that I could wake up really refreshed.
So Angie, I'll add to that, or a caveat, we no longer have face-to-face quals. They're done online.
Oh no, that was...
Yeah, at least for now. I mean, it may change, so
okay.
just so you know.
Okay, well, cool. You'll have all of your stuff there then. That's great.
Yeah.
Chris, did you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Angie. Thank you for sharing what you shared so far up to this point. I do have a question around, I don't know if it's about a question, but just your experience about the program evaluation piece, because I know there's an article critique and then there's program evaluation. In one of my prior graduate programs, I transferred my credit for program evaluation, so I don't have any resources related to program evaluation in regard to IST. So I was just trying to get some thoughts around the program evaluation piece of that qual.
Absolutely. I can show you what it looked like if that would be of value. Do I have time, Dr. Bonk, to do that?
Muted. Let me also add that you might want to ask Dr. O or whoever's teaching 561 if you can sit in the class, even though you've already taken it and got credit for it. You'll learn the IU way of evaluation. It might be beneficial to you and you wouldn't cost you any money. So just this, with their permission, of course. I don't want to speak for them whether they would let you in, but I'm more than likely they would. So just that's one option. Angie, go ahead.
Okay, how am I doing on time? I don't want to miss out on some things people are interested in.
Well, yeah, let's spend another 5 on quals and then move to all the tools that you have. There's so many cool tools you have.
Okay, absolutely. All right, can you see my screen now? It says quals practice question. Okay, thank you. All right, so I think you're talking about this one, right? You're a member of a new training research department in a large organization. And Chris, if you'd like to see this, I've gotten permission from everybody. I can share these documents if you want to see what it would look like. So all right, so here's what I did. I received this document and I want to say, yeah, this is all that I was given above the arrow. And then I just kind of started typing into it. So I had to write a short report summarizing recent research. Let me see, is that the one? There was. So then what I had to do was, it was a scenario and I had to determine that. I'm thinking now that it might be a little bit different than the program evaluation one that you're focusing on now. Dr. Bonk, did that change the prompts?
No, this is, and they also have these examples in Canvas. So they can take these sample tests, evaluation tests. So what you're showing them is a value because it's walking them through what what exists in Canvas. So thank you. It's pretty much the same. It doesn't change much. And
okay.
I finally graded the evaluation question for the first time ever last semester. So I always tell students, I'm never going to grade the evaluation question. Well, lo and behold, Dr. Kwan gave me the evaluation question to grade. So I found them to be actually, I think in some ways it can be a bit easier than the critique. And I think some students think that you know, some of the critiques can be, you know, you have to have insight on them. And so yeah, you have to practice both. I mean, really, you have to practice both. But I would do different types of critiques or articles to critique it, get into flow. Once you do one evaluation, you kind of learn the methods of evaluation. They can work for multiple scenarios. But critiques, there's so many flaws that could exist or limitations. That takes more time, I would think. So my advice, anyhow. What do you think, Angie?
I agree. I thought that this was kind of a more of like a dessert question because it was kind of fun to think around.
Yeah, dessert.
Yeah. So I thought about the benefits and the cautions, and then I went into implementation. So I broke down the question into pieces, and then I organized what I wanted to say based on exactly what the question said. You know, if I'm this particular one, looking at the different ways that I could implement new training research. So that was this one. And again, I'm happy to share this. I pulled all of these articles during the time, but I had it all with me. And my browser was just loaded up with all sorts of tabs open. The other question, this is, let me see. Oh, here's the critique of research. So I had to look at the specific article, and then you can see I like checked off once I felt I had addressed that. So I framed out my response, and this one I think I hand wrote my response, but I went back through and I just wrote all over it. I check marked and made sure that I went through each of the question prompts. And then this one is about implementing VR. So this might be closer to what Chris was asking about. But I had to develop a plan for this evaluation, and I had to address these specific things: methods and procedures, the types of data I would collect, some sample questions. So I went through and I can share my responses too. I think I still have those if you're interested in seeing them. But I went through and I pulled several articles. Okay, Chris, it sounds like
if you send this one and you send the response, I'll send everybody. I think that'd be I think that'd be good. What do you think, Chris? Yeah, he's got a thumbs up. Okay.
Okay. Great. I have this little thing that won't go away. Scoot it down a little bit. All right. And then there's a whole qualifying exam procedure document. I really encourage you to look at all those resources. But it will tell you exactly what day one will look like. Is it still 2 days? Okay. So it'll tell you exactly what each of these days will look like. But I encourage you to, this was actually something really helpful Dr. Brush told me. He said that you should simulate the day.
Yeah.
So I did do that. I just kicked everybody out of my house, took a personal day, and I practiced what it would look like. And at first I thought, I'm going way overboard. This is just nuts. But it actually really helped me to approach it in a really calm way, because I'm like, hey, we've already done this. We're fine. And it'll be extra helpful for the rest of you if you can simulate it in the environment where you will do it. Because then you'll be able to have items with you or put them in a different space. But it'll be the same space where you take your exams. So that'll be really helpful. All right, anything else about quals before I move on?
And we have at least one PhD student here, so let's move on. Show them some of the tools that you used and you got and you found valuable, because they might find some of these tools valuable as well. I know I think Erin Crisp often talks about some of these same ones were helpful to her. So I know students will benefit from that.
Absolutely. Oh, the IRB seemed really complicated to me, but the IRB office, they were great. They were super helpful, very responsive too. So they got right back to me when I had any questions. So
Angie, no problem there. Adam Mills is coming next week from IRB to talk to everybody. So
he helped me. He's been there a while.
Yeah, he has been there. He's really good. I'm having him do a shorter talk because often he walks us through the history of everything and why we need it. But when you take the exam, you learn that. So I don't think we need all that. So we're having a little different format than in the past. It'll be more Q&A, but with some presentation from Adam. But he's really good. So that will cover that. So
good.
Yep.
All right. So there were a couple of different tools that I looked at. One of them was my study was qualitative in nature. And so I knew I was facing a lot of different interviews. And so I looked at some different tools. I know that Google Docs has a voice to text tool. There are lots of different ones out there. But I was looking for one that I could just do right from my phone. And I looked at a lot of different ones. I landed on one called Temi, and it's pretty cheap. It's just like 10 cents a minute. And what it does is it loads everything into an app. And they also have a desktop tool so that you can go through and scrub your transcripts afterward. So here are the pros. And I hope this is still an active link. But the pros were that it was, pretty cost effective, 10 cents a minute. It caught most speech, and there was an online platform. So I could scrub, and it also keeps a copy, and I could download it. And here's why that was valuable to me, because what I did is I went in and I did my interview, but I also planned in time afterwards to go directly back to my office and scrub the transcripts. So the text-to-speech apps, and I know they've gotten better over time, but they don't catch everything, especially because a lot of the people I interviewed were, younger, and they spoke very rapidly. So it was tough to catch everything that they were saying. So that was valuable to me. When I planned to do maybe an hour interview, I planned another hour afterwards so I could scrub the transcript. So that's a tip that I have for you, is just to do that right away. But and I could download it. And that's valuable because I uploaded them to Google folders, and Google has a tremendous search tool within it. So when I started to code, I could look for specific phrases really easily. So that was helpful. And then some of the cons, it didn't catch all the speech. So that's why I did have to, that's why I had to scrub it a little bit. Sometimes it misunderstood. I live in Michigan, so we tend to drop the ends of words. So that was a little bit tricky. I did make the decision to use Tell Me, but I scrubbed my transcripts immediately. And then I downloaded all the transcripts. One of my coworkers recommended Scrivener, and that was an online portal. And basically what it is it's like digital note cards that you can write on, and you can move them all around, and then you can expand and really get your sections, different sections of text, and move them around. It was neat. It was pretty cheap. I bought it for $40. You could easily move through your chapters and headings, but I didn't like the way the format downloaded. So, and it needed scrubbing. And I'm like, I'm already scrubbing over here, so I don't need to do that. I ended up just using Google Docs and Google Drive, and it worked fine for me. What I did was very extensive and very full Google folder. But it served my purposes just fine. So I would encourage that. Looks like we have a couple of questions in the chat here. Oh, it's 25 cents a minute now. Okay. Oh, thank you for adding those links in there. But that was really helpful for me. I'm trying to think. Here's another suggestion. As you're looking forward to starting to draft, or you've selected your topic, I encourage you to start collecting articles right away. So use your classes, if you have many left, I don't know, but to try to use your projects to push your topic a little bit and to think on it, and then start to collect your articles in a folder, and right away, get your citation and put it in a space with some keywords. That is really helpful, because by the time you get to your references section, you're over it. And you're like, I don't want to look at this. It's done. But you still have to have all those citations. So do yourself a favor, and just as you're collecting articles, put them in a place, and then just keep track of them, and just alphabetize them as you do the citations. Because for me, when I got to that point, I was so grateful it passed me for doing this myself a nice favor. So there's that. Proposal defense. For the proposal defense, you have to prepare a presentation. You should dress professionally, just because it helps with the way that you present yourself. It helps you just kind of get in the right frame of mind. I had paper handy so I could capture revisions and questions from my committee. And then I did a repeat back. So before I left my proposal defense, I said, here are the things I heard you say, and here are the questions that I heard you ask. And what was helpful with that is not only did I verify what they wanted me to know, but I also was able to pull out some more questions, like, oh, that reminds me, we should also look at this. So that was really helpful for me. What I did from there is I took my notes and I created a plan for when I was going to complete each of these changes, and then I marked them off when they were done. So for me, it became a living document that I interacted with. When I went for my defense, again, I arrived the day before. Make sure that you sleep well, eat well, breathe. Take pictures of yourself before and after. It may sound silly, but it's like, I've done this big thing. I'm coming and I'm attending this dissertation defense. I've done amazing work, and this is like the culminating step. So I took pictures before and after, and I found it really enjoyable. Because I was talking all about my study and the hard work that I did. So I encourage you to enjoy it. I brought my own printed copy of my dissertation and my presentation, and I wrote notes all over it. You can also bring one person. That was the way it was when I went there. I brought my husband, and here's why I did that. Because I had my dissertation and I had my presentation. I knew I was going to be talking. His job was to take notes. He took notes on everything that he heard. He wrote down page numbers, and so did I, so I could compare the notes afterward. Plus, it was just kind of, I needed someone every now and again to be like, all right, you need to breathe now, before I and we went for a nice long walk in advance, and that helped calm my nerves. Again, dressed professionally. I brought a notebook, and I had my husband have one. You'll need to prepare a presentation. You may not go through your whole presentation during your proposal or during your defense, and that's okay. Just have it ready to go. You should expect revisions because they happen all the time. I don't know that there's anybody who's come out of a defense without revisions.
Two
People?
2 out of 125. I had 2. I had one last year, in fact. You might know him, Rob Elliott, might have been in class with you. He's an IUPUI instructor. So yeah, he did mobile learning. He had no revisions. He could change things if he wanted. He had the option to do, but
Wow.
I had one about 15 years ago. So it doesn't happen often. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Well, don't stress if you have revisions. I did, and it was fine, and I survived it just fine. Again, do a repeat back. So before you leave your defense, make sure that you recite what you believe are the necessary revisions. And that, again, you're verifying what you believe to be true, and it might trigger another change that somebody wants. So that was really helpful. And then I just have some overall tips at the bottom, which I think I've gone through some of them. I also have my contact information at the bottom. If there's anything you want to ask me outside of this space, I'm so happy to help. I'm so excited for all of you, and I'm so happy to help in any way that I can.
So let's leave it there for a second. That second last point, select the committee you trust, is really an important one. You want to comment on that?
Yes, it's not suggesting that anyone is untrustworthy, but it's more like you're going to be working with this group for a while. So, this is a big personal experience. And so you want to have a group of people you can be a little bit vulnerable with and say things like, today I feel very overwhelmed. Help me know what I need to do from here. So it's more like you have a good relationship with them. My chair was Dr. Brush, and we met monthly. And I just kept a Google Doc with running notes. And then I sent him that doc, and I said, here are the things I'd like to talk about. Just giving you a heads up. And then we'd go through that doc each time. So that was really helpful.
And the last point, just be organized. That's the key to the whole thing. Soon May's doing her dissertation now. She's very organized, as you can tell. And that helps get you done. You have that, the first point in overall tips, you have the last point, plan and organize,
it's so important. Yes. I should have put it in the middle here too.
And can you scroll up just a bit? There might be another thing to comment on. EDD defenses can now be online, and probably a little more than half of them are online defenses. I prefer them to be face-to-face where possible, but they don't have to come here for that, actually, just so you know. Now, her husband came, and the real important thing about a spouse coming, or a friend or someone else, because afterwards you can go to a restaurant like we did. We went to BJ's Brewhouse, and he could buy the beer for everybody, and that was really
right.
Good. Your husband has a wallet with money left in it, so that was good. And he was happy to spend.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
So come to Bloomington. It's much more fun.
I really recommend in person.
Yeah, it's much more fun. you know,
And go to graduation in person too. Oh
Yeah.
my goodness, that was so. I was the last person to walk before the pandemic in IST. So Dr. Bush hooded me, and then nobody else got hooded in person for a while.
she was situated there on the stage. Should have taken a picture. So I think we got so can you share this handout with Sunmei and I, and then or do you have a link to it that you can give Sunmei so we can download it? Or
Yes. Yep. I'll send Sunmei, can you send me or can you put in the chat or something your contact information, and I'll just send you all my qual stuff and the stock. Thank you.
Yep. So if you send us Sunmei, then we can send it to all the, she'll put it in the packet for all the students. She summarizes every class for us. So thank you. Does anyone have a question for Angie before we open this up with Patrick? And I really appreciate that presentation, Angie. Now, there are 3 people. We have 2 EDD students with us and 1 PhD. Taufik's a PhD student, right, Taufik?
Yes, I am.
Who just did his qualifying exam. Chris and Paula have not done their qualifying exams, I think, right, Chris and Paula?
Yes.
Chris? I can't hear you. Have you done your quals, Chris? Your audio is.
Are you able to
There
hear
you
me now?
Yeah, yep, now I can hear
Yeah,
you.
no, I haven't done it yet.
Okay. You're planning to do it this spring?
Yes, yes.
And Paula's this spring?
Yes.
Okay.
spring.
Okay, so very interested in your experiences with the qual side, although Angie covered a lot of that previously. But if Patrick could just briefly talk about his experience in quals, that'd be helpful.
Sure. Well, I did my quals in person. Everybody has to do it in person. And but my dissertation defense was online. That was during COVID. And that was
Patrick, now everything's online quals. We don't do face-to-face for ADD students. It's changed since you've been
Oh,
here.
wow.
Yeah,
Nice. Because I took a suitcase full of books with me just to make sure I was ready for any question that came up.
They have a baggage charge?
Well, back then they weren't doing that as much, so I was okay.
Yeah, now they are.
I actually liked the qualifying exam. It was stressful, but it was kind of a good way to realize I have learned a lot in this program, and it was kind of fun to just be able to show that I had learned a lot during my time in the program.
I agree with Patrick. I think the EDD quals the way I wish the PhD was, Taufik. I don't like the PhD qual the way it is, presenting in front of all the faculty. It's kind of stressful. I like the sit down quals. Anyways, go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah. So it was, it was a long day. It was a long time to write up something and do that. But no, I actually liked the experience. And then I had a little presentation about what I was thinking about doing for my dissertation, and that was good. And I liked the 795 class. It was kind of, I think it's important to have a reason why you're doing it, because I was in a unique circumstance where I didn't need the degree for my job because I'm a CPA. The university accepts my work experience, and my CPA license is certification to teach, and it's not required. They encourage it, but it's not required to have a doctorate. And I knew people who stopped at the qualifying exams, all but dissertation or ABD.
ABD.
And I thought, well, I wanted to finish it. But I don't think I fully appreciated how much it takes some effort to do it. And I had to have a reason why. And my reason why was just because I felt so strongly about what I was studying. There were times on those dark days where you're like, maybe I should just stop. This is too much. But I'm glad I stuck with it. And I think knowing why you're doing it is helpful. So I teach accounting here at BYU, Idaho, and there's a gap between how we teach accounting and what is done in practice. And through my learning at IU, I really attached to the 10 steps of complex learning, or 4-component instructional design model that Van Marienboer and his group kind of created. And so I tested a module in my tax class using 4CID to see if it improved learning. And I guess that's a little bit of a gamble. You know, if I would have done the test and found out that it didn't have any improvement, it would have been harder to write the paper. It's still possible, but would require a little bit more effort. And fortunately, it did show a benefit, a statistically significant benefit. They took a pre-test and a post-test, and the learning and this pre-test and post-test, which could be like the CPA exam, was the same between both groups. My control group was teaching it like normal, and then my experiment group, I was using 4CID. And then at the end, they also had to do this authentic problem, which they would experience in the real world. And the students who were instructed using 4CID did statistically significant better on that part. And so I was really excited about that. And that was my dissertation, was on that module, the outcome, the statistics, and that process. And that's what I finished on. And then afterwards, I kind of wanted to share this with other people who taught accounting. And I reached out to some friends who have their PhDs in accounting, because in my position, I don't need to publish. We're a teacher-focused or student-centered, teacher-focused university, and we really don't put any weight to the need to publish. And
so Patrick, could you hold off on that? It's the second part on publishing. Let's stop there. I want you to tell that in a second. Just
Okay.
hold. So Patrick was able to implement an instructional design approach from the IST field, and it had impact on another discipline, on accounting specifically. And as a fellow CPA, former CPA, high five to you. It was really great to have finally have a person from the field of accounting as one of my students or my advisees. So it was great to see, because that was the way I felt as an accountant. It was taught in, very traditional fashion, very boring oftentimes, and very factually based, just prepare for the CPA exam and not for how to work in the real world. And so, authentic kinds of learning, which is what this field should be involved with, is authentic kinds of and formats of learning. So it's really a breath of fresh air to see it. However, as I mentioned with Angie, very few students have no revisions, right? I've only had 2 out of 125. Very few students today do experimental designs like Patrick's doing. And so, for me, it took me a little bit to think about, doing class-to-class comparison kind of studies, which he did, which I used to do when I started, in the old days. Now things have shifted to be much more qualitative or mixed methods in nature, or looking at a class as a single case study, looking at just have students service their own controls, not comparing 2 classes, in effect, looking at growth over time of students instead of across sectional comparison study, which was kind of refreshing too, just to be on that and to see the difference that you made. Before we go to that, publishing that, what was the reaction like from people you work with in terms of when you finished and had a doctorate? What was that? Were you treated any differently? Did you have any change in role or anything in the setting? Did the president of the university make an announcement, or, I'm just curious.
yeah, nothing happened. Nothing changed.
So it really was just for your own personal volition.
Yeah, we have to give you some history, this university used to be called Ricks College. It was a 2-year junior college. And then in 2000, the sponsoring organization, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, said, well, let's make it a 4-year institution. So it converted from Ricks College to Brigham Young University, Idaho.
Right.
And
that's grown tremendously since then.
Yeah, we probably have, I can't remember now, at least 18,000 students. It's pretty
God, what was it in 2000? How many students?
I think 4,000 or 5,000. Yeah, really small.
You've got a big online program too. I know in instructional design and other kinds of things.
Yeah, no, they do. The university does a lot online, not as much in the accounting. I kind of want to work on that, but right now we don't have that much online for accounting yet. But one of the president of the university at that time was just talking about how we need teachers who know their discipline really well as know the scholarship of learning and teaching. And when I came here, I thought, well, I know the discipline, I know the accounting, I know the tax, but I don't know the instructional design as well as I probably should. And so that's what really prompted the decision to get the doctorate. It wasn't required. There's no difference in compensation, actually. There's really no difference at all. So it really was just for me to kind of level up my own learning about the field. And I really like it. I like it a lot.
So I'm going to ask both of you a question before we go into the publishing. I want to also ask Angie about her change in job roles. So we're going to have a what's next question, which includes publishing, includes new jobs and all that. But let's situate back into writing the dissertation. If you had 3 tips or guidelines for doing a dissertation or writing one, and you were telling my students, what would those 3 tips be to have a successful dissertation product and defense of that product? And I'll go back to Angie, who's been talking a bit, and she's got some notes from her previous talk, and then we'll let Patrick think about that for a second. You might repeat something you said earlier. Go ahead, Angie.
So the 3 biggest tips for just approaching the dissertation, or okay.
Yes, successfully, yeah.
The first one is, I just want to reiterate, when you're choosing your topic, start out with something broad and then start asking around in the field to see what it is that people are thinking about, and to make sure that you kind of narrow your topic. I wanted to start with new teacher attrition, but to do that would have made my dissertation overly complicated because it is a multifaceted issue. So that's the first one. The second one is to talk to the professors. They're there to help you, and just ask them really honest questions. I would say something like, I need a little bit of help taking this, or I'd say, like, I feel a lot of pressure to make this into a quantitative study and I don't really think it fits there. What can you tell me about that? And so that was really helpful. So that would be my second one. And then my third would be to make sure that you're very organized, but in a way that makes sense to you. It doesn't have to make sense to anybody else as long as it makes sense to you. So for me, it made sense to have Google folders and files and my Google Doc that had all my references on it, but make sure that it makes sense to you. So I guess those would be my 3 main suggestions. What do you think, Patrick?
Those are really good. Those are really good. I would, to repeat what I said, you want to care about what you're studying. If you don't care about it, it's going to be hard to push through. That's what kind of helped me kind of get to the finish line. And so I think caring about it is number 1. Number 2 is you have to read a ton. Like to Angie's point about kind of having a broad and then narrowing it down, I was kind of like, I knew the area, but the more you read, the more it just helps you see what opportunities are available and where you can take it. And here, let me put this. Like this was a book I bought. This is like a big book, and it's all dealing with accounting education and different theories. And then what happens is when you read one article, you get like a couple different questions. And so you kind of like go in this like little web of more things to look at. And there were so many different things that I had to like read before I kind of had like my narrowed down, I feel good about where I'm going process. And then the third one would be to Angie's point, which she mentions twice before, is organizing that information. Because sometimes I would be, where did I read that? Where did that come from? And if you can get a good organized structure, that'll help you find what you're looking for. I think. So those would be my three. So one, care about it, read a lot, and then try to organize your thoughts in a way to make that process of retrieving or making connections a little bit more manageable.
Yeah, three things: passion, which is emotions; read a lot, which is divergent thinking; organize, which is convergent thinking. You know, you need all that. You can't just think creatively, divergently. You can't just think convergently, logically, critically, and you can't just rely on emotions, passions, and volition. But you need all that. It's a triangle. You need all three pieces to have a successful dissertation. To make any progress, you need creative thought. You need generative thought. To have anything that's unique and different from someone else, you have to generate, brainstorm, connect, diverge, find your, but you have to converge, you have to bring things back for people to make sense of, for even you to make sense of what you're doing, right? So life's a constant generative, evaluative process. You know, and I had that on the wall in 1989 when I arrived at West Virginia University a long time ago, before Sunmi was born, maybe, or close to. Anyhow, I wrote that on the wall for my students for my first class. Life is a generative, evaluative process. Then one student got up from the back and he writes down on the wall, no, Dr. Bonk, life is a generative, evaluative, degenerative process. You have to start back in. But you know, we diverge. A dissertation should diverge at points from something everyone else has done, but then find a convergent thread to build it back in so that you can talk to other people in the field, have your dissertation make an impact within the field. You have to figure out where to place it, what it says, and where it's going, and what the field, what it provides to the field. I know that sounds big and lofty and glamorous and all that, but it has to. You know, if you're down here, if you're in the weeds all the time, you're not beyond those weeds too much, because you're really not connecting thoughts or connecting ideas or connecting the data in your research study. So you have to go back and forth between those little articles that you're reading, all those one-off articles, and take notes on them. But you have to compile those one-off notes and those readings that you're doing so that you can make more grandiose kinds of statements and themes and summations of what the literature says. So I agree with all three of what you said, Patrick, but it's more than that. It's an interweaving of those three, and realizing that a researcher has to rely on their creative sparks that are happening, has to rely on the emotions that are happening, but has to, in the background, have to have the skill to pull it all together. And that means organization of that chaos, because there's a lot of chaos in a dissertation. And if you lack the organizational structures, whether it's a concept map, a mind map, or looking at themes or whatever, however you're doing it, you're just going to keep generating new ideas and you'll overwhelm yourself. So you have to be able to pull back and organize those respective thoughts along the way. Angie, I can't remember what your themes are anymore because I've been blabbing on and on. Remind us what your these three themes are. Can you connect them to what I said and what Patrick said? Because Patrick nailed it there.
Yeah, I said to start with a really broad topic and then narrow it down. And
so generative, evaluative,
very similar, right?
Divergent, convergent, right?
Yep. And I talked about organization. And the second one was about reaching out to professors and experts in the field and just having conversations. And it's just, you learn a lot from that.
So that second one is where I'm going to take us at the end of today. I have 20 ways to collect data, how to get your data for your dissertation. Actually, I generated 18 in the last hour before. I'm missing 3. So we're going to have an activity where you're going to suggest 3 for me that I'm missing. Angie and Patrick will be gone, but my students will stay with me. But I came up with 17. I'm sorry, I came up with 17 ways. I need 3 more. So after they're gone, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to talk about my friend Cecil Smith's article on advice for starting a writing program. I've got he's now dean at Southern Illinois University. I think this article he wrote for AERA, American Education Research Association, back in 2004. I helped him with. He went to grad school with me a long time ago. It took him like 15 years to publish the article. And the journal he published it with then hadn't become the editor of the journal. So it's a journal on adult education that Horizons in Adult Learning or something like that. Anyhow, I'm going to go through his tips, which are really my tips because I gave them all to him, and his tips again because he reworded them and so forth. Cecil's a great human being. And after that, we go through Cecil's tips, we're going to go through my 20 ways on how to collect dissertation data, or how to get dissertation data. So does anyone have a question for Angie or for Patrick about the dissertation proposal side or dissertation defense or the writing? Any questions that you would like to pose to them? Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Wanted to thank both of you for taking the time to go over what you've learned from the experience. So thank you.
Any question for them? Karen, Tawfik, Paula?
No, sorry, I don't have any questions because I just joined not too long ago. So,
Right.
so
Yeah,
I just
thanks.
got the back end of it. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's great. We're taking it. You'll see the recording later. So my question for you is a transitionary one. What happens with one's life after the dissertation? Okay, Angie, you've got a new job. I want you to talk a bit about that, about searching for, did you deliberately search for this new position? Did it just come upon it and show up in your lap? People were trying to hire you. Were there other positions that you considered prior to taking this? And why, what led you on the path that you're on? And I shouldn't ask you this, but are you happy with your chosen path? And Patrick, you've published part of your dissertation and it just came out, and I shared it with everyone here. It just came out last week. So can you talk a bit about the publication side of it and the evolution? I think I'll start with Patrick here. And I'll start with a story first. Erin Crisp is a third person I was hoping to bring tonight, but she got a new job in Tennessee and she published her qualifying exam. I published my qualifying exam, so I understand that process. Erin and I published her qualifying exam, her comprehensive question, the day 2 qual together. What happened is I read her day 2 qual and I said, this is really good. This is really good stuff. It flows. I don't have it. She summarized the literature on feedback. It was feedback in terms of assessments in Indiana Wesleyan, is where she was working at the time, Indiana Wesleyan University. I said, there's some key points are being made and maybe no one else is doing it and so forth. How they're giving feedback to students to increase the retention rates and graduation rates and all this kind of stuff with the forms of feedback. And I said, boy, this would make a really good publication. And so after she wrote to me and said, maybe we should, you want to help me with this? And I said, okay, I'll help you with it. And we went to Tech Trends. Tech Trends is an established journal. It's all gotten better over the years. Our qualifying exam questions, critiques often come from Tech Trends. It's not tier 1, it's tier 2 or 3, but it's good. Everyone reads it within the field of learning, design, and technology. So in that process, we went through many rounds back and forth, and we had to make changes for the editors, of course. And in that article, we had a preprint maybe 10 months before the actual article got out. So in every article published, you have to be patient at different stages. Some things happen just like that, and all of a sudden it's published and released. Other things take years to go through just the review process. I had an article in ETR&D, EdTech Research and Development, come out last week, online first. We went a year and a half just trying to get the thing reviewed. I had a struggle with the editors, writing to them. Their editors are close friends of mine. I knew both. The one who handled our article, I wrote to him or her many times about the article. It was sitting and sitting. We had minor revisions. We made those minor revisions. We were sitting for months, just minor, just little things, and had to remind them that we submitted it and so forth. But I didn't want to be pushy. It's real hard when you have a co-author who's younger, who needs to get established in the field, to tell them to be patient. Just be patient, and they're getting upset and frustrated and so forth. And so you kind of walk this balance between working with the editors and talking to them. So the editors you can write to, when you try and publish an article, you can write to the editors. You're not interfering. They're not the ones reviewing the article. They're sending it out. Now, in this case, ETR&D's case, we had sent them, it was a little bit of a complex kind of paper, looking at social presence and teaching presence in online learning kind of things. There's a structural equation model, all this stuff. And so he got one person to review it, and it was a good review. The editor decided to review it as the second person. Now, this has happened a couple of times recently for me. I'm being cognizant of time because Angie needs to leave in a minute, I know. So we'll have Angie go first in a second because she's got to go to a meeting here. So you know, the editor ended up reading it himself, and boom, we had both reviews done. Like it was taking months and months. All of a sudden, the editor did. So same thing happened for this next round. And then we went through 2 or 3 rounds with this paper. It got accepted finally on January 16th or so. By January 20th or somewhere on, we had the copy edited, proofs to edit. And by the 3 days later, it was up online as online first. So the frustrations that we had all along in trying to get this article published, and then all of a sudden to see it come to fruition, and now I'm sharing it with my friends, and they're saying, correct, they don't realize all the frustrations that went into getting it to that point. We, had if you're not on top of things, some of these articles can sit forever if you don't inquire. So don't let it lag for too long. It's become very normal for articles to be in review 6 months or 8 months or 10 months. Try to find out from your advisors which ones review faster. I think maybe that might be the most important question today. And it may change. Sometimes journals like the Journal of Computing and Higher Ed, they have a long backlog and it can take forever. Now recently, I know the editor of that journal was a guest in my fall class. And she's turned it around. They're quicker. So it changes, but you can get some general advice as to where to publish, what to expect along the way. If you talk to, like Patrick said, talk to a couple of people, or Angie said, you just got to ask them and their opinions about all this. So I just want to give you a backdrop. We were able to publish the quals. I've been sharing it. I published one of my quals, very unusual story on social cognition and writing. I had 2 sit-down 1-month quals, one on cooperative reading. I was a literacy kind of person at the time. The journal called Written Communication, a top journal, SSCI journal, the editor was in the School of Ed with me at Madison, and he gets on the elevator with me one day, and I said, I submitted an article to Written Communication. He says, yeah, I know, we accepted it, no revisions. That was my first publication. I've never had I thought I got spoiled. I thought every article is going to be that easy. It's never happened again. So don't get a big ego when you get published. You're the same person, pinch your skin. You have to suffer through some that get frustrated with some. Some are easy, some just float on through. It's the people who read it. If they really like it, they'll let it know. Sometimes it's just who read it. So you just have to submit it to another journal. If you get rejected, it's just go to another journal. Don't get too overwhelmed with rejection. Rejection is the failure is part of the process. You almost have to celebrate rejection. In Madison at grad school, every reject letter got a free drink at one bar one night. And I had applied to 50 places, I had 40 rejections, 10 places didn't respond. I had 40 free drinks for all my friends. You have to celebrate the rejections in life. Otherwise, and celebrate the good things that happen. So anyways, Angie needs to go, and I need to have Angie talk a little bit more before she goes. Can you tell us again about the path to this new position?
So I have worked since January 2013 at Baker College in Michigan. It's a smaller college, and so I was the director of teacher education. It's a multi-campus college, so there were 3 of us who were directors just over different campuses, and so I did that. And then
and helping first-year induction teachers and trying to really think about the state of Michigan's laws and how to improve what's going on in the whole state of Michigan. It's not just Baker College. I think you're really interested in what's going on in the state, right?
Yeah. I've done a lot of MDE. Michigan Department of Education is really involved with teacher education, and so just great relationships there. I did a 1-year visiting professorship at Aquinas College while I was at Baker. Because once I finished the doctorate, then I was like, oh my gosh, I have all this time on my hands. So I learned to knit, and then I did this 1 year visiting professor stuff, and then I did some side jobs and things. Anyway, we were just ramping up to do an early middle college in Michigan for teacher education. And then right as we were gaining some momentum, the pandemic happened, and teaching is not a profession that a lot of people go into these days. People just don't want to be teachers anymore, unfortunately. And so smaller colleges like mine, our program was shrinking and shrinking, and then the pandemic happened. And then they told me later on that year that they decided to discontinue the teacher education program. And so that was the kick to the gut, but they asked me to stay on and finish graduating 3 groups. So I told them I would, and I started looking for a job, and I knew I was on a retention contract at that point, and I was able to, I figured I had a tiered job search going on. In the first year, I could be a little picky. In the second year, I could be less picky. In the third year, I can't be picky. So I received a few offers. One was to be dean of teacher ed, dean of education over at a school in Pennsylvania, which would mean that my whole family would have to move. And so, my husband and I talked about it. It was still within the first year. So I was like, okay, I can be a little picky. So I turned that one down, even though that would have been so much fun. That was a great college.
What college was it?
King's College.
King's College?
King's College, yep. And
I've spoken at that one in London, but
oh, yeah, that was a different one then.
Yeah,
I
that
was
was
only in Pennsylvania. But yeah, my husband came with me. We were looking for places for our kids to go to school and everything. And then we just eventually decided, we're going to stay put. And then I actually was offered a dean's position at Baker, but it wasn't in teacher prep. It was in like 6 other programs, and I didn't have any experience in those fields. And so I said, thank you, but I just, I'm not sure how this is going to work. But so I did get a few offers anyway. Here's how I did my job search. I started with Indeed, and I just started typing my favorite parts of the job that I was currently doing. And I loved designing my courses, and I loved working with people, and I loved thinking about elementary education and literacy. And so I just tried different variations of the keywords and to see what kinds of job titles popped up, because I thought, I'm sure there's something I'm not thinking of. And I launched, you're not even gonna believe this, friends, I had 7 search emails that would come to me of like job searches, varying tiered, compensation levels and different names of jobs and everything. But then this job came up, and it was last year in February, and I was at my in-laws' house, and luckily I had my laptop, and I said, oh my gosh, I love this. This job looks so cool. It's senior learning designer of professional development. So all day I get to write professional development. I get to go to sites. I only travel like 15% of the time, but I go and I watch my PDs that I make. I get to see them being taught. I don't present them myself. And I get to talk to amazing people, and it's just, but I know for a fact that it was my, that I have so much gratitude to the IST department, because I know that I learned a lot that helped me directly in this position. But yeah, the process took forever. I applied in February, and I didn't start until July. because it just took a really long time and I had to do a work sample, and I think I had 5 separate interviews. But I was just totally myself, because I said, listen, they're either going, I have like the soul of a, super eager elementary teacher. So I'm like, I can't hide this, because if it pops up after they hire me, they're going to be like, who is this crazy lady? So I was just very much myself, and I got this job, and I'm just grateful for it. I'm grateful for it every day. But here's why I'm crazy. I started working there at the end of July last year, and I had one more group of teacher prep people, one more group of teacher education students, and
At Baker.
And I'm looking at them, and I said, I got to finish this with them. So I'm working 2 full-time jobs now, right now, which is, very, it's a lot of work. Some days I feel like I'm going to tear my hair out, but all in all, I'm glad that I made that decision. I just didn't think it was right to leave these guys in the nth hour, this last group. So they'll go through in May, and then I'll have one job, and it will be great. But ever grateful for what I learned along the way, and for this new position. It's great, and the organization is great. If you see a job from Springboard Collaborative, oh my gosh, it's a great organization.
That is all great to know. And your story is wonderful, actually, and things work themselves out in the long run. Anyone have a final comment or question for Angie before she runs off? Because she's working 2 jobs plus this for free she's doing for us. Anyone want to jump in with any related story that you might have, briefly? Like, it's quiet tonight. Well, let's at least give her a round of applause. You might want to turn your camera on so she can see you and give her a round of applause. I don't know if you can hear. So
Thank you.
thank you, everyone. So Angie, we'll talk to you next time I teach this class, if not before, which might not be for, I don't know when I'll teach this again, but it's been like 3 out of the last 4 semesters. So
I'm happy to come anytime. And congratulations to you all. You've done so much work to get here. It's amazing what you're doing. So, and if you have any questions, honestly, I'm so happy to help with anything. My email is at the bottom of my presentation notes that I just sent. So
yeah,
have a great night, everybody.
There's 7 or 8 who will watch the recording who are not here tonight. So so thank you.
Yeah. Thanks so much. Have a good night.
Good night.
Bye.
So before we take a break, I asked Patrick to come in here to give us his publishing story. It might not be similar to my publishing story. I don't know. Can you tell us about the emotional side as well as the tactical side in getting this published? Did you have insider information into the journal? Did you know someone? Was there a review process? How long was it? All those kinds of things.
Yeah. So as soon as I finished my dissertation, I wanted to get it out there, not because I needed to for my job or wasn't critical. I just wanted to let people know that it was out there. And I reached out to some friends of mine who had got their PhDs in accounting, and it seems like they have their own projects to work on, and that's fine. And so I just kind of put it on the back burner. I presented some little things here on campus where I teach about it, but just wasn't planning on really doing anything with it, or wasn't sure how to proceed. And the Tax Advisor magazine is one that professionals read, and it's one that educators read, and I read it. And they have a campus to client section. And in October of 2021, so about 14 months ago, there's an editor, and her name's on all of them. And her and somebody else had written this article, and I just reached out to both of them, said, hey, I really liked your article. Thanks for sharing that. Based on what they were sharing out there, I thought, well, you might be interested in what I did. And I just kind of gave a brief paragraph summary of what I was doing in my class. And she replied back and said, this is something we haven't really covered in this magazine. Would you be interested in writing a paper for it, an article for it? And I said, if you think that would be helpful, yeah, I'd be happy to do that. And this kind of section article comes out every 2 months. And so it wasn't going to get published until February of this month. So I had a lot of time to work on it. And it was done earlier. And she asked if I wanted it blind reviewed or open reviewed. And that's the term. But and I didn't care too much. But since it was so long into the future, I thought, well, let's do a blind peer review. That would be great. And so I submitted it in June. And it was reviewed. I had just it wasn't major comments. It was just kind of things to consider. And they said, you can make changes if you want, or you can just leave it how it is after that review. And I made a little tweaks, a couple tweaks, submitted it to once that editor approved it, then it went to the overall editor for the entire magazine. And they kind of did the formatting and added some pictures and things. And so it was approved probably in October, and then it came out in February. So it does take a long time. And I did update some of the things. So in my dissertation, I just had converted one module of the course. After I completed the dissertation, then I worked on completing the whole course using 4CID. And so some new data that I had in the article was students who had completed the entire course and their experiences in an internship. And those were really positive. And so I included that and kind of linked my dissertation in the article so people could get to that if they wanted to look at the statistical analysis of that. And so it does take a long time. I would say Dr. Bonk has a lot more experience. I think I was pretty fortunate that it worked out that way. I have to admit, I don't know how to really publish. And it's extra work that's not really, it's not part of my job description, but I do care about what I do. And I want other people to just be aware if it helps them. And if it doesn't help them, then that's great too. But it's helped me. And so I'm hoping to attend there's an American Accounting Association, the AAA, and they kind of have a lot of different journals that focus on different areas of accounting. And one of them is accounting education. And they have a conference every year specifically for that group. And I'm hoping to attend this year just to kind of get exposed more to it. I would think the EDD is more practice-based, which I love, but it's separate from the PhD. I think the PhD track kind of helps you learn how to publish and how to connect and do all that stuff. And I'm just starting to explore a little bit just to see if it might help me kind of spread the word of because I'm doing a lot of different things. And so I'm excited to see what that community is about, I guess. So that was my journey. I don't know if that's helpful or not.
Yeah, and I'm putting my one article in the Journal of Accounting Education in the chat window if anyone's interested. That took 8 years. My article, unlike Patrick's, which took 8 months to publish from June 2022 to early February, late January 2023, 7 or 8 months. That took 8 years. And my colleague Steve Smith and I at West Virginia University submitted it in 1990. It sat on the editor's desk for 2.5 years. He sent it back to us. It took us probably a year and a half to revise it. We sent it back. It sat for another 2.5 years. In the midst, I was going up for tenure. I needed that article published. It's a tier 1. It's an SSCI journal. It's been cited a lot of times, nearly 100 times. Maybe I can't remember now. But anyhow, it's on how to do what your dissertation is, how to embed critical and creative thinking in the accounting curriculum and change. I have 3 more in accounting, changing the new paradigm, getting to a new paradigm of instructors as more of a coach and facilitator in the accounting. Any comments or questions for Patrick? Anyone facing a similar thing that you're trying to publish something in a magazine format in your local, in a journal for your field, or anyone who has anyone published anything from their work?
Well, they're thinking, the article that Dr. Bonk pushed there is really good. I mean, 1998, he was the forefront, and we're still trying to catch up. And that's the frustrating part. And what's interesting now is there are fewer accounting students now than there used to be.
Right.
And some of the firms now are trying to figure out, how do we do this? How do we find accounting graduates when there are none? And I attended a AICPA kind of professor networking meeting, and they had a firm there, and they asked that question about, or they talked about interns. Actually, they said, of all the interns we have, some of them do not get full-time offers. And the only reason that they don't is because of their soft skills. That has nothing to do about their knowledge of the accounting field. It's their soft skills. And that's been around that's been talked about for a long time.
Yeah.
And we still haven't implemented it as well as we need to in the accounting curriculum. So that's one thing that I'm trying to work on in my classes, and see how it goes.
And authentic learning.
Mhm.
And problem solving.
Yep.
And decision making, all those high order thinking skills, as well as the interpersonal kinds of skills that you
Yep.
talk about that they
Mhm.
lack. Well, I want to thank Patrick for coming in tonight and from Idaho. I think you may be the first guest I've ever had from Idaho. You may have popped into one of my classes previously. I can't remember. Maybe you did.
I
But-
did one time, yeah.
Yeah, so it's the second time I've had someone. It's always been you. So I'm going to stop the recording at this point. Hang on a second. If I can actually figure it out, stop the recording to the cloud week 5.